Hello, and welcome to today's Trainer Education webcast, Leaders Born, Managers Made, hosted by HRDQ and presented by Mr. Jim Eicher. Before we begin, please note there is a chat box located at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Use this button during the webcast to submit any questions you have. We will either answer your questions as we receive them, during our Q&A session at the end of the presentation, or by email after the session. Today's webcast will last approximately 55 minutes, and we will include a brief Q&A session if time permits after the presentation. Please stay tuned at the conclusion of the broadcast for an exclusive offer. My name is Sarah Montgomery, and I will moderate today's webcast. I'm in business development for HRDQ, a publisher of research-based training solutions that improve the performance of individuals, teams, and organizations. Today's presenter is Mr. Jim Eicher, a respected author, consultant, and subject matter expert in the fields of sales, organizational strategy, leadership, and communication. Jim's professional career includes leadership roles at Booz Allen Hamilton, Andersen Worldwide, and Symantec, and he is currently a senior manager of organization development for a large technology firm. Jim is also the author of the highly acclaimed book on management communication, Making the Message Clear, as well as several assessment tools, including the Neurolinguistic Communication Profile and the Leader Manager Profile. Welcome, Jim.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you to all of you out there for tuning in this morning. Really appreciate you taking the time and out of your day to do this. Before I start off, I just want to say that my emphasis today will be around giving you practical applications that you can take away and use in your role, regardless of whether your role is internal at a company or whether you're an external consultant, in any way that you'll be able to use things to go through to help you on your job. One of the things that I'd like to do right from the bat is this particular webcast is based on my Leader Manager Profile. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to take a quick poll and just get an idea of how many people are familiar with the profile, and that helps me kind of calibrate where I need to focus the presentation and the content for the day. So if we go to slide 2, you're going to see over on the left a beautiful photograph of what the profile looks like and the model. As a matter of fact, we're going to come back to the model a couple of times today because that'll give you some direction in terms of what to do for individuals and for your organizations. But how this will work is you've got a polling box on your screen, and I ask you a simple question here. I'll get a yes/no answer, and then we're going to do this for a few different things as we go through the webinar this morning. And after you answer, what I'll do is I'll share the answers with you. So with that in mind, and looking on slide 2, what I'd like to know is just, are you familiar with the Leader Manager Profile? Have you possibly even used it before? So that's just a quick yes or no here, and let me see how your answer is coming in. Okay, what I see is, okay, and they're still coming in here. Appreciate this. Let me see. We've got just about everybody's voted. All right, that's good. Okay, we have 6% have used it. About a third of you, 29%, say it looks familiar, and 65% of you haven't used it at all. So thanks very much for the feedback. The way I've got this set up is that if you've never used it, I'm going to give you the full menu in terms of all the content around that and all the applications. And then hopefully if you have used it or it looks familiar, you'll get another layer of understanding here as we go through. So with that said, I'm actually going to launch into the topic here. So thank you very much for the polling, and we'll go on to slide 3 here. And let me speak a little bit historically here, and this is not just in terms of learning and development or training or OD or related HR fields. But if you look at this question, kind of historically, you might have even had this question asked to you if you were in elementary school. And that's the idea of, do you think leaders are born or made or both? And, there's been kind of a thing that, oh, leaders are born. They're these people that have this, internal intrinsic effervescence and charisma that, people just want to follow them and do anything that they ask. And in some cases, that is absolutely true. There are people with charisma that you sort of naturally are attracted to and pay attention to what they're saying and what you want to do. But along the way, particularly in our field in the last 10 or 20 years, a couple of things came up. One was, hey, that's great, but I need someone to get results. So that's not just the whole picture there. I need something just beyond some of these leadership factors. And the other thing that changed, and this also changed around 20 years ago, some of you may have heard of CCL, as the Center for Creative Leadership. They actually started doing some rigorous research into what makes leaders, and yes, can you train them or can you provide them with experiences so that they can develop capabilities perhaps they're not even conscious of, and develop and produce different behaviors that will benefit them and the organization. And as a matter of fact, again, if you look at historical figures, there's a lot of people in politics that people said, hey, this person at a gut level, they're just a terrible leader. But then some situation comes along and they, quote, rise to the occasion, and they do a phenomenal job. And sometimes the opposites happen. People get elected, they think they're a great leader, something comes up, they don't do so well. So that really got people thinking about this whole leader and management thing that are going on here. So I want to ask you that question. We've got a polling question here coming up, which kind of has three components. I'll ask you the question and then share it with you. And so in your own opinion, do you think leaders are born, or are they made, or is it a little of both? So let's see here. Okay, we're getting voting fast on this one. That's good. Just about done here. Okay, well, the predominant here and answer is that a few of you think leaders are born. About 12% think leaders are made, but the vast majority of you, 85%, think that they're born and made. And that's certainly my bias, particularly as we go through the content today, is that you can bring out the characteristics of both leadership and management if you know what you're looking for. And that gets me to really one of the key takeaways here, and I will point out the key takeaways with each one of these slides as we go through them here, is that your intuitions that you have about leadership and management are a lot of times based on what I call unconscious competence. That is, well, you kind of have an idea what the difference between a leader and manager is, or what you might have to do to get a person to be a better leader, a better manager, but you're not quite sure exactly what the behavior should be, or what experiences, what kinds of assignments they should have to get there. And so what we want to do today is take you from that standpoint of unconscious competence and make it conscious competence, so that you know exactly what the difference is, exactly what the behaviors are, what programs you need to do for this person, what assignments you need to do for that person, what kind of group activities you need to do over here, what kinds of organizational processes you need to put in place over there. So really taking it, making it conscious competence, turning those intuitions into practical, executable actions that you can go forward on. So that's really kind of the main point of where we're going here today. So I want to drill down to the next level. Go to slide 4. We're going to have another quick poll here. And this is how this one is going to work. The point of this is that we're actually already going to start to drill down on what your intuitions are based on. And they're based on a set of real observable behaviors that you can point out, you can measure, you can go to your management and say, this is what it's about, this is what it consists of, this is why I need resources, this is why I need money, which is really why we're all on the phone here, to try to figure out how to, answer those questions and get the resources we need to get our jobs done. So let's take a look at, start to drill down on what some of these intuitions are based on. So I'm going to read you first these two sets of really assertions here, and then ask you a question. So let me read the first one. Leaders tend to budget and control costs, map out milestones for projects, and squeeze efficiencies from operations. Managers tend to create a vision of future direction, nurture long-term relationships that create loyalty, inspire others to work beyond their perceived limits. So my question to you is simply, do these statements, as I put them together, make intuitive sense to you, yes or no? Okay, so we got the voting coming in. Oh, that's been pretty strong there, all right. Getting pretty close, got over 2/3 of you have voted here. And okay, we're pretty close to done here. All right, so for about 1/3 of you, these groupings of assertions make sense. And for about 70% of you, they don't, all right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to focus on what leadership and management behavior is about. And really the remainder of the program, moving towards conscious competence, is how we're going to map out and learn to apply the differences between leadership and management behavior. Now, I'll just jump here ahead. In the model I have, the bias I have, and the best practice research that the model's based on, is that these tend to be, in an individual, they tend to be blended. But if you want to stretch them out, the first set of assertions here around budget, milestones, and operational stuff is generally traditionally considered management behavior, and vice versa on the other one. Vision, relationship focus, and inspiration are leadership behaviors. But we're going to see how those can cross over and fit together and make sense here. So what I'm going to do now is kind of traditionally go through what the agenda is going to be here for today. And thank you very much for jumping right in there and getting on the polling questions, because that gives me a really good sense of where we're at for today. So if you're looking at slide 5, I'm going to quickly walk you through these. And there's a few that we're going to emphasize on here more than others. So first of all, what we're doing now, we'll go over what the outcomes are. Why this is important, I call it behind the 8 ball, but there is a reason why, in the big picture, why you should be interested in this and why you should be tuning in today, and we'll go over what that is. We'll talk about the so what, who cares, why should this matter. Then when we start to think about, again, how do you know? What specific behaviors and activities can you do around this that will make a difference? What you do it. We'll go over the model and definitions. What that bullet refers to is specifically the model that's in the leader and manager profile and what that's about. The 3 key areas that we're going to focus on is balance, individual, and organizational. So if you go back to those assertions that were on the prior slide, what's really important is how those are balanced out in the organization to get the business results that you want. So we're going to look at that. Then we're going to look at what applications you can use, whether you're learning and development, or training, or coaching, or mentoring, whether you're a consultant, an individual contributor. We'll talk about how all that works. And then finally, this leadership and management doesn't occur in a vacuum. There are times when to emphasize leadership behavior is more appropriate than management behavior and vice versa. And we'll talk about exactly what that context is and how that works. And then we'll go over a quick summary and have some Q&A here. So that's kind of the big overview for today. So if we go into the next slide here, and I'm just going to kind of walk through this quickly again. We've actually gone over some of this. The main objectives for today is we're going to learn the differences between leading and managing, and that's what I was referring to as conscious competence. The second thing is that we're going to look at step-by-step ways that you can develop these, because unlike, going back to one of the earlier polling questions already, leaders born or made, is that you can, and it's been shown empirically that you can develop leadership abilities. However, how you do it is very different than how you develop management abilities. And the trick is identifying what those differences are, identifying the assignments, and then we're going to tackle some of the questions, because some of the things you need to do in your organization may not be ready to do. And we'll talk about what some of those are. And then to turn that around, there are some things in terms of developing leadership that your organizations may be doing already and may have been doing for quite a long time. So we'll figure out what those are. One of the interesting things on bullet 3 here is that you can kind of go to extreme leadership and extreme management to the point where it's essentially dysfunctional. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, because those of you that have sort of had a gut intuition about, hey, something's not right in my organization, but I can't quite put my finger on it, we're going to figure out what that is. And then finally, I've alluded to this as well, we're going to know when to apply the leadership and management behaviors in the context of a group, because the reality is we all work in teams, we all work in groups, we all have to collaborate, even across geographies. So there are some aspects in which to emphasize one of these behaviors over another and have the best match fit, and we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's go on to slide 7 here. What's the business landscape? Why are we concerned with this at all? All right, well, kind of traditionally, if you look over the years, a lot of organizations would have like a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, and a COO, the Chief Operating Officer. Or there was someone basically that was sort of the relationship salesy or visionary person, and somebody that got things done, the operational person. And a lot of companies still have that. But if you look at a lot of the successful companies over the last 10 to 20 years, regardless of the industry that they're in, that they want two for the price of one. And they want somebody running at the top, and usually the COO is the one that disappears. They want a CEO that knows how to manage the operations and has a vision and a sense of where the business is going. And the thing is, that has trickled down all the way down to the management and supervisory level. They want people that can get things done, and they want people that also have some sense of strategy and some sense of direction and where things are going, that build relationships with people, that can coach people, that can mentor people, as well as handle the projects, handle the details, and that sort of thing. So that doesn't always work, but that is clearly where it's really almost a fiscal pressure has gone to hire talent or develop talent that has this skill set in a single individual. So that's kind of the big picture for that. And if you look at under the bullets under the heading to be successful, what's kind of driving this in the marketplace is just the increasing competition and customer demand. Quality's got to be great. You know, you want service, you want it right now. You want to be able to talk to a person on the phone or email or in person that gets the problem solved right now. You don't want to delay, and you want everything at the best possible price, particularly right now in kind of a deflationary, recessionary context. You want everything at the best possible price possible. So that's where that is. So if we go on to the next slide here, slide 7 gave us the bigger context, but this one is a little bit more focused on you and how this fits together here. So, you know, I'm not quite sure what everyone's background is, but usually we get people that are in areas of learning and development, coaching, individual consultants. Some of you may work for firms, but usually you have a sense of development and learning within your organization. So why you should care is that understanding how learning and management works, how they're different and how they can be applied, will benefit a lot of the things you're trying to do in companies. So if you go over here and look at individual applications, some of you may have deliverables or assignments around coaching. Some of you may have around mentoring. Some of you have responsibility for management development in your organization. Some of you with succession planning. And these are different tools to pull out both leading and managing behavior. And other of you may have, you know, broad-based organizational assignments. One of the big things now, I mean, it's kind of gone off and on, and it's been around a little bit more enforced in Europe over the years than in the U.S., but it's coming here as a high-potential program. A lot of what you're turning to now, I know what we're really deeply in the middle of is a comprehensive talent strategy. And what does that look like? And what kind of skills do you have to have? What kind of competencies do you have to have? So it really benefits you to understand the difference between leading and managing and what to do about that. The whole idea about optimizing your resources, whether they're captive employees, whether they're partners, whether they're third party, whether they're consulting firms, and of course how you build teams. And there's really a core things that are really driving this in the business landscape, and that's what's really on the bottom there, is that it's around efficiency, flexibility, and scalability of talent. So we're really kind of in the big picture now, looking at leading and managing really fits this talent situation that you've got here. All right. So now on slide 9, what we're going to start to do here is we're going to start to drill down even more. And I'm just going to kind of walk through very quickly on with these on here. These are what we call items or specific behaviors, and they're the kinds of things, as you go through the leader-manager profile, these are the kinds of questions that will start to tease out different behaviors in people. So again, your intuitions, your unconscious competence is based on something. So it's based on the behaviors simply that you observe. It's no more complex than that. So what are some of the things here? So do you have individuals that spend time one-on-one with individuals below their level? In other words, they'll go around and they'll talk to people that are, quote, not, you know, rather than focus on managing up, they'll manage down, they'll spend time, they'll spend some personal discussion, they'll spend some business discussion. They have a pretty good understanding what motivates you, what you're interested in. That's just kind of a natural part of their routine. And usually it's a natural part of the conversation that employees really like. Well, that a lot of times indicates a kind of a natural leadership behavior. The next one is, do they know how things work? In other words, this is a person that knows how to get things done, knows who to call, knows how the processes work, knows who needs to talk to whom to get something done. whether it's manufacturing, processes, services. It's more of a management skill. That's kind of your go-to person. So you may have experience with that. Another one is, do they have followers? There's some people in companies that other people just kind of naturally, they listen to, they value their opinion. They tend to, if they make a suggestion, go out and try to carry it out some way. In other words, they do have that sort of natural charisma to them where people feel like, hey, I can trust this person, I can follow them. And the trust factor is very, very big in leadership, and this exemplifies leadership behavior. The next one is, do they get tangible results? Do they produce the deliverables? Do they get out the stuff? You give them an assignment, no matter how abstract or concrete that is, and they get it done and they exceed your expectations. Again, showing some great management skills there. The next bullet, do people that work for them do more than they are asked? This is a really key thing to go around and ask yourself. If you're doing a talent assessment or succession planning, one of the secret handshakes you want to look for is look around and say, there's a group of people over here that consistently exceed expectations and do more than they're asked. And then what you want to do is you want to look at the person that's running that organization, because they're doing something that motivates people beyond just the box that they work in or the role that they have formally defined for themselves. And that's a really high indicator of leadership. And the last one here is, do they have a plan? And that stands as fairly obvious as a competence for managers here. So that kind of, it just gives you a quick drill down on kinds of things you need to look for here. So with that is, let's go to the next page. And I love this picture here because, okay, you're sort of at a crossroads, leading and managing, which way do you go? And we're going to spend the rest of the time going through and figuring that out here. So if we go to slide 31, I want you to read this carefully. I'm sorry, I misread it. Slide 11. We're on slide 11 here, and there will not be a test on this, but I will go through it here. This is actually the model that I flashed to you really quickly on the first page. This is the model that the leader-manager profile is based on. And there's 6 main pieces to this, and each one has 5 items as you go through. It's probably more detailed than you wanted, but that's sort of how it's set up. But I want to go through here how this works here. So let's focus on the middle box, because this kind of gets to really the driving force of the business landscape here. In other words, if you're really going for the 2-for-1, if you're really going for somebody that has these skills integrated, so that's sort of your end state. It's sort of like if you're in learning and development, this is your North Star. This is where you want to go. So I really want to get someone that has both of these sets of behaviors and they're integrated. So what does it look like? Well, what it really looks like is these sets of behaviors are aligned, which is along the top. So if you draw an imaginary arrow down to the bottom, they're aligned for results. So somebody that has these competencies and capabilities blended, what they're going to do is they're somebody that no matter what, they maintain order in the organization. They enable decisions, and they influence outcomes. All right? And that's a blend of, as I go over these other things for you. So the cluster of leadership behavior in terms of best practices, which is what this model is based on, is that leaders tend to communicate the organization direction. Some people call it the vision or the strategy. It doesn't have to be as high level as vision, but definitely these are people that they know where the organization is going, not just in the short term, but the longer term, and they're able to articulate it to you in a way that is understandable to you and is tangible. The next thing is they tend to focus on relationships, having a relationship focus. And third is they tend to be inspirational. They tend to be people that know how to frame things in a way that get buy-in from you to go forward. On the management side is the operational direction and the pieces of the operation going forward. They focus on the organization, but more of a sense of the hierarchy and reporting relationships than just the interpersonal relationships. And they tend to also reinforce the performance. And again, that's more of a formal way with respect to, let's say you have a management by objectives kind of performance system, or you have a rating system with set objectives that tie into your company goals. They will tend to be individuals that focus a little bit more on that than personally how they might inspire you to go forward here. So the big thing here is that if you've ever run into somebody in your organization, or even, let's say, if you're working outside of your organization, if you work for a nonprofit or do something with your kids, and you meet somebody that has what I call the wow factor. Well, the wow factor is somebody that really covers that middle section there really well. They're aligned for results around these competencies and integrated them in a way that it's just very, very exciting, because people feel directed and organized and how to get things done, and they're really emotionally excited about getting those things done. And that's kind of the ideal blend here. So here's one of the keys here, key takeaways on slide 12 here, is that, let me speak to this. Let me jump right down to the third bullet here. Now, most of you in training and learning development, and I spent a lot of my career in there, we've done management programs, different kinds of skill building things. You know, they may take different forms now. You know, we used to have more in classroom. Now you're on a webinar now. That's more typical. You might be on a telephone education thing. The medium really doesn't matter. I mean, it does from a standpoint of global reach and scalability and cost. But in terms of the actual content and the kind of skill building you've done, you know, around finance, around management development skills, teaching people situational leadership, whatever form that's taken, that's been kind of the traditional educational piece, capability building piece around developing management skills. Well, what came along formally, and some companies have done this informally for years, like IBM and General Electric, really were definitely decades ahead of the curve on this, is that what develops leadership are the kind of not traditional classroom training or that kind of content, whether it's delivered in the classroom or even what I'm doing right here. It's the kind of assignments you give people. For example, one of the key ways that you develop people is you have a special project and you put them in charge of the project. Or you've got an organization that's failed and you want to see if they can turn it around. You have a cross-functional assignment here. It's like, okay, they've worked in an engineering silo for 10 years. Now you're going to have them integrate supply chain engineering, marketing, and sales, and give them an assignment around that. So that is actually how you ferret out and develop these leadership skills. That goes to that first bullet up here, all right? And now the trick with this, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go through here, but the trick is your organization ready to do this? For example, one of the mandatory assignments at General Electric for over decades is you work in one business unit for 2 years. This is if you're on the management track, and then you must, no matter how well you're doing, where your family lives, where your children go to school, what your marital state is, they don't care. You go on for another 2 years and you work someplace else. Another business unit, another continent, they don't care. That's what you do. And they have typically, they're extreme in a sense, but they have typically the highest rated leadership talent pool in the world. So everybody wants to grab the vice presidents that run these divisions because they know that General Electric has already put them through the pain that their company doesn't want to put their employees through, which is they move them around all over the globe for most of their lives so that they can work in multiple work assignments. Now, alongside this, they're also getting classroom education or traditional education and management, but they're getting both here. So that's the extreme example. So how that's going to look in your organization is something like this. You may not go to the General Electric extreme, and IBM's has been almost as extreme as that, but you may have a succession plan, or you may have a program for high potentials. So you may say, well, I'm going to take the top 50 or 100 people from my company, and I am going to systematically put them in different assignments. But they may be 3-month assignments, 6-month assignments. I may keep them in their hometown. I mean, there's variability on that. You don't have to go the GE sense. But you are going to have programs that we call succession planning high potential, and there's other ones where you are going to have to give people a menu of assignments to see how they do. And that's how you develop and identify and develop those leadership skills. Now, the bullet in the middle is kind of the glue here. A lot of you out there probably have programs, formal programs around mentoring and coaching. You may hire coaches inside or outside your company, or even different consulting firms deal with your managers. And this is necessary for both people to develop both management and leadership skills. They really need to develop these one-on-one skills with people around coaching and mentoring. That'll benefit both of them. So we're going to move ahead here to slide 13. And so I've talked about the individual, but hey, we work in groups, we work in teams, we work in organizations. So how does this work here? Well, the ideal is you take individuals, you nurture them, you give them assignments, you train them, and they turn into great leaders and managers. However, we don't always have the time to do that, and that does take time. I mean, GE's expectations was that you would develop into a leader over a period of years. And of course, today, we all want results yesterday. So the next thing you can do is, if you understand from a conscious competence point of view what the difference is between these sets of capabilities, the next thing you can do is you can create a team of individuals who form a blend of these competencies. So you can say, okay, so-and-so over here, great operational person, going to put them on the team. This person here, great vision, great leadership skills, going to put them over here to work for this operational person. That'll really help on this project. Same thing, my department, I'm hiring some people in here. One of the things I want to look at is not just the content skills they have related to their job, but I want to look at leadership and management skills, and I want to get possibly a blend so that I can look at one, because that's good for the department, it balances out, but two is, you want to look down the road and ask yourself, well, who might succeed me? So I want to bring in people that, have a variety of skills and build that. Another thing that's happened a lot is, and actually happening more is a lot of, the third party or partnerships or outsourcing stuff was around, we're losing jobs here. These jobs are going to go someplace else. But for the last few years, and this is because I've studied this, where the trend's going is it's not about getting rid of employees. We're keeping our pool. We may even be growing now, but what we want to do is that we want to augment some skills that we have. So you might bring in a consultant. You might partner. You might actually bring in an outsourcing firm, not to outsource your employees, but to actually add your skill base and even learn from them. Do a knowledge transfer so those go into your organization. So there's a whole lot more flexibility out there with that community as well. So these are just some different ideas that, because there's two models. In learning and development, we tend to think of how can I develop this individual with leading and managing skills. But if you actually talk to the people that are really the managers and directors at your company, they have such short-term, high-pressure goals that they really you need to really help them think through, that's great, but how can I build this right now? And that's about adding people to their team, whether they're full-time or whether they're partners, that can assist them in the outcomes that they want to achieve around leading and managing. So if we go to slide 14, we're going to shift a little bit around here, and we've talked about kind of how to develop these skills, how to balance things out. And I did want to point out, because you can get caught in this trap, is that things can get out of balance. And what happens is, some of you may run across somebody in your company that, everybody loves, they're charismatic, they know stuff, and they're really kind of the guru. Well, go talk to so-and-so. They're really the guru about blah, blah. And they're very inspirational, but after a period of time, once you get over the shock and awe, you ask yourself, where's the beef? What has this person really done? Okay, and you find out that there are some people that are really charismatic and have these kind of extreme emotional leadership skills, but they can't execute. All right, and so that actually ends up being a fatal flaw or weakness. Now, on the other hand, you have somebody that they're the master. They know how everything works, all the details, policy. Everything about your culture, the entire history, they know where all the bodies are buried and all that kind of stuff. But they actually tend to be people that are pretty inflexible when, again, you need them to execute on a task. So the point is that they become very, very rigid. So you also may see that in your organization as well. The point is for people at the extremes, it's very difficult, particularly if you're in a position as a learning and development or an OD person, to probably get those people to change. All right. Not that you couldn't do it, but I'm just saying kind of a red flag out there pay attention that may be the case. And it's sort of the 80-20 rule. You don't want to spend 80% of your time on making gurus and bureaucrats, balanced leader managers. You know, you want to spend the 80% of your time on everybody else to get them balanced out. All right, so we're going to do a couple of application exercises here, and this is how this is going to work. I'm going to read you kind of a scenario here, and there's a couple of questions underneath, and what you're going to do is, if I have this right here, is after I ask you the questions, then you're going to use your chat box and just put in your answers. And what I'm going to do is share some of those with you, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I've got a couple of scenarios we're going to go through here before we wrap up for today. So here's the first scenario or case study on slide 15. So an organization under intense pressure has exhausted all of its ideas on products and services and perhaps lost its way in the marketplace. It now needs individuals who exhibit leadership skills to stage a comeback. So my questions to you that you can type in are, what kinds of assignments would improve the leader skills, and what type of team or staff skills would the leader need to consider? So go ahead and take a couple of minutes and type those in, and I'll share some of those with you. Again, here we're focusing on an organization that needs leader skills, that has leader issues. So let's see what we've got here. Okay, I might have to scroll down here myself. Hang on. Okay. Okay, bring in a consultant for problem solving. Yes, that's actually kind of a low risk thing to do. Is honestly, companies, if there's issues, you bring in somebody from outside. Well, there's two things here. One is that you bring in somebody from outside, you actually get a point of view, because you're caught up in your groupthink so much that they'll give you a different point of view. The other thing, and I'm being a little cynical here, is also the sort of the blame the consultant thing. I mean, some of it is, well, if you don't like their answer, you know, it's easier to say you don't like the consultant than to, you know, your own employee's opinion. That's a little bit cynical, but with that said, it does give you an extra point of view in order to push what your limits of thinking are about that. You could have, again, we have outside, you know, we're getting a lot of stuff on bringing in outside for brainstorming, for creativity. Again, I would encourage that. It's usually a safe thing to do on the first round, is bringing somebody from outside. Another thing, too, is you really do, and some of you may do this, is you may call it different things, but these different cross-functional, cross-business unit environments. Some of you out there may have formal or informal rotation programs, and that would be an example of one of these things that you might want to consider. Okay, so that was a good representation here, and kind of right on with the content. Let's go to the next slide, 16, and whoops, sorry, we finished this up here, and we're going to go through one other case study or scenario real quickly. So here we have another company with an outstanding market presence and revenue, but with aging infrastructure. Could be anything. Could be IT. Could be its plans. Poor margins and diminishing quality. Kind of sounds like maybe they're in a commodities market. Now need individuals who exhibit management skills to stage a comeback. So here we're focused on management. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to read these questions, and you just type your answers into the chat box there. So in this context, in this case study, what kinds of assignments would improve manager skills, and what type of team or staff skills would the manager need to consider? So go ahead and take a few minutes to do that. Okay, we've got a lot of good stuff here. I'm going down here. Okay, I've got stuff on organizational vision, task force, build a well-blended team, okay, let's get staff skills. It's good. Actually, moving people from line to staff is another good thing. Okay, got a lot of stuff going in here. Okay, develop some of the more traditional skills, accounting, controlling. Okay, another thing good. If you've got cross-functional infrastructure issues, somebody talked about bringing in somebody from IT. It's actually good to bring in cross-functionally from all the supporting functions to discuss what some of the issues are. We've done that before, whether it's HR, IT, finance, or that sort of thing. Mentoring is always a good, and I don't mean this in a snappy sense, thing to consider. In that, here's the bottom line, and one of the reasons we're talking about this today. Business is so complex and moves so fast that nobody can do it by themselves anymore. And I think it was always a myth that you could do that anyway. But having somebody to give you some advice, whether it's inside or outside the company, really, really goes a long way. And we've all got to get over the ego of that we can do it ourselves. Okay, some of your SWOT analysis, that's another good one. And I'm just going to cover a couple more because you guys have given so much feedback here. And yes, also too is looking at the whole marketing and branding situation. That's another thing that you can do to consider. How to deal with these management things. Kind of the bottom line of what you're saying, if somebody's in a situation like this, particularly as a high-level leader, is that if you can be the orchestrator inside the organization to bring in the resources inside and outside the company to give them the advice that they need to move ahead, you're going to score big points. Okay, and here we're going to get to the last section here before we wrap up. And that's what context does this occur in? When do I know to lead, when to manage? And I want to do one more quick poll here. And if you look at slide 17, this is the Bruce Tuckman model. You may not know it by that name, but you may recognize the form, storm, norm, perform. And what I simply want to ask you, just real quick snap, is that how many of you are familiar with this model or have seen it before? It's either yes or no. You've either seen the form, storm, norm, perform, or you haven't. I'm not even asking you how familiar you are with it or if you've used it, but just have you seen it before? Okay, so good. We got almost everybody in here. Okay, so we've got 34%. They've seen it before, totally got it, used it. 21%, they've seen it, but familiar, heard of it, but not have used it. And 45%, about half of you, not really. So this is how it's going to work here. So if you go into the next slide, all right, what it is that, groups or teams, I mean, those of you that know the model, I'm really, this is going to be a really quick run through, but I just want to give you the basic concept before we wrap up today. And that's that groups or teams go through predictable stages of development, and actually so do individuals. So if you think of a startup company, they're in the form stage. They're figuring out what business are we in, how are we going to structure ourselves, what's our mission going to be, what's our product line going to be, how are we going to sell stuff, very much in this forming stage. Then as they go through that, they get through another stage where they're kind of sorting out roles, responsibilities, who's going to be in charge of what. Because if you ever worked in a new org or a new startup, a lot of times everybody does everything. Like I actually did know the daughter of employee number 5 at Apple, and when she was a kid and working there with her dad, and they were starting out, both Steves, Wozniak and Jobs, they did everything. They packed stuff in boxes, they labeled things, they went to the post office. I don't think Steve does that anymore. But you kind of do everything. But after you start to grow, you kind of sort out and says, well, who's going to be in charge of what? And who's going to be accountable for what? That's the storm stage. Then as you sort out the roles and responsibilities, you do start to put down processes, like we got to have a sales process, we got to have a marketing process, we got to have a supply chain process, we got to have a research and development process. So that's part of the norming stage. And then finally, as you build all that through, then you're in the perform stage, and you're just really refining your efficiencies there as you go through. So, that's when you're getting stuff done. You're saying, okay, we have got a great product we're getting out there, but can we provide better customer service? Can we improve quality? Those sorts of things. So that's sort of the general cycle or context of groups and teams and individuals as they develop. Because speaking individually quickly, when you're new to a company, maybe you have years and years of experience, but in the company, you're in the form stage. You're trying to figure out, how do I fit here? What's my roadmap here? How do I fit in with the mission? How can I make a difference? And then you start to figure out, okay, what exactly is my role going to be? What are my job duties? What are my deliverables? What am I going to be accountable for? Then you also go through a stage where you're kind of norming and you're getting used to how things work. And then finally, you're in the perform stage where you're through all that, you know what it's about, what your role is, how things work, and now you're just churning out stuff and getting rated on that. So that's the overall concept of this here. Now, if you go to slide 19, the key here is that at different stages, this is why it's important to know the leading and managing behavior requires a different emphasis on what behaviors you need to emphasize at that particular point. This is the secret handshake for the whole webinar today. Is the box there, or not a box? The items there on the right side of the box on my page when I ran it off, but it's showing the stage and the emphasis here and how you align those. So let me walk through here. You can see sort of the guidelines here on the left, but really it's about balance. So if an individual or a team is in the form stage, it's just starting out, you need to emphasize leadership behaviors. People need to know direction, they need to be inspired, and they need to understand the relationships they need to have to be successful. So it's really all about leadership. Let me turn it around. If you're in the beginning and you have somebody that's coming in and they're hard management, they just talk about how to get things done, what the operations are, that's all important stuff. But if you don't understand the relationships, the directions, and have some emotional engagement, that's another big word that's out there, engagement, then you will not evolve through the stages as quickly and as efficiently as you could. Then if you're in the storm stage, you're still doing some leading because you need some leadership and interpersonal skills around sorting out roles and responsibilities. But you're going to start to emphasize those management skills about the organization, about operations, and about performance, and layering that in as you go along. When you get to the norm stage, you're very much focused on operations, processes, procedures, the things that we traditionally call management stuff, accounting, whatever that is. And then finally in the perform stage, you're really focusing on the efficiencies and leveraging the scalability of the organization. So it's almost a pure play of the management skills. So this is really your algorithm or your roadmap in terms of if you're going to map out your applications. You just don't do that around leadership and management with individuals, but you do it in the context of the organization or the team that you're going to have that individual lead and manage. So in summary, if we go to the next slide, and this is also a little bit more of a drill down that's in the leader-manager profile, is that leaders focus on guiding, developing others. There's a growth focus, there's a future focus, and leaders are generally individuals that are comfortable with uncertainty in their area. The manager focus, and again I'm kind of going to extremes here, but it's to emphasize the difference in terms of conscious competence, is the focus is on administration. That's really around behavior and performance in the present. So you want to link those three middle things together. So leaders, development, growth, future. Managers, behavior, performance, present, right now. What are you doing for me right now? And that really goes to underline the certainty portion. Now, really, in summary here, your job in understanding the difference between leaders and managers, and where I hope this is helpful, is to close the gaps in a conscious competence way that fits the need of your organization so that you can achieve the best optimum performance that you possibly can. So with that said, I'd like to thank you very much for taking your time. And I believe Sarah's going to open it up to questions. I do have a quick worksheet for you on slide 21 that you could do on your own, which is things you're going to do differently over the next month and what that's going to look like and what your measurements are on that. But now I'm on slide 22, and we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Jim. Great presentation. Participants out there, thank you so much for your participation. It's been a great group this morning. Go ahead and start sending in your questions. We do have time for Jim to answer a few. We have a couple that came in throughout the presentation, so we're going to go ahead and start with those, but continue to send them in. If we don't get to answer them live today, we will, Jim will send you an email with a direct response as well this afternoon. So our first question here is from Cheryl, and the question is, how do you handle implementing potentially politically charged experiences, such as rotation or high potential programs?
Well, great question. First of all, the snappy answer to that is and that's one of the critical questions that's out here, particularly when you look at start implementing the kinds of leadership behaviors and assignments that we talked about earlier, is that it's probably going to be a fairly slow process. Unless you have somebody at the very top of the organization that is requesting this and will kind of give you carte blanche to go ahead and say, okay, we're going to do a rotation program, we're going to do cross-functional assignments, or we're going to do short-term projects. In other words, that they're going to support something that is disruptive of the present way that you manage. That could go quickly. Like I know I worked for an organization where the vice president of engineering said, here's $1 million, I want a rotation program. Okay, well, enough said. Okay, the thing was, let's get it done. If you don't have that, then you're going to need to go through and talk about, and feel free to use anything from this presentation, that there's a difference between leading and managing, that the research shows that leadership is developed around assignments. These are some of what the assignments look like. This is what's out there in the universe now. There's rotational assignments, there's succession plans, there's programs around high potentials, and you're going to need to make a good business case study around that. But the good news is that there's plenty of research out there on the internet and other places that will give you the horsepower to argue for that. And then at that point, they can reject it or not. But it's pretty clear that the companies, the best practice companies, are doing that kind of stuff, and there'll be the research there to back it up. So
Great.
Another question.
Our next question comes in from Martha, and she asks, how do you deal with or make changes around a culture of, we have always done it this way?
Well, that's a good question, and that's pretty typical in organizations. The thing that I always do with the "we've always done it that way" point of view is you need to uncover the pain points of the organization, because if they're really there, you can't make them up if they're not there. But this is the thing: is if their point of view is, hey, we've always done it this way, and gee, the way that we've always done it is causing us a lot of pain, maybe the way that you've always done it isn't so good. So what you want to do then is, if you do want to uncover the pain points, but you want to frame your solution in a very positive way. So you don't want to say, hey, that's great, we've always done it this way, we're screwing up now, and we've got to do something differently. What you need to do is say, in order to further grow the business, in order to do whatever particular business goals they have, doing X would enable us to get there, and then you kind of lay out your plan. So it's a quick answer, but basically you have to find the pain point and put it in a positive frame, your solution in a positive frame.
Great, thank you. And yeah, we have one more question here. It's come in from Armando, and they ask, how do you know when you're ready to move from leading to management?
Okay, I'm not quite sure. Move from leading to management. Well, there's a couple of ways to look at that. One is in the context of the form, storm, norm model. In other words, I'm not sure if the question is pragmatically, hey, I've been in a leading role, when do I need to focus on managing? And that's really going to depend on the maturity of the team and the organization that you're working with. If it's a well-oiled, pardon me?
Jim, Armando just sent in, and to clarify a little bit, he specifically is talking about supervisor to manager. If that helps clarify the question a little.
Yes, thank you, Armando. That does. How do you know when they're ready to move on? Well, if they've exhibited in your mind both the kind of basic management skills that in your organization you should know, in which they would be a successful manager, or if you can see that, or you can see what that gap is, you can try to fill that gap with training. The other thing, too, is you want to do the same thing with leadership. And you may want to say, well, I think this person could probably make the bridge managing and making a little more training here, some experience there to do that. But the key thing is you want to ask yourself, have they exhibited some of these leadership behaviors, or at least do they show the potential of doing that? And if the answer to that is yes, then it's going to be easier for you to make a decision to move them in that role. They might need a particular kind of assignment to get them into that management role, but you've already assessed that they have the potential to fill that. In other words, you've just seen, hey, they're pretty good with people, or, they do have a sense of direction around here about where the business is going. And I know this because I've talked to them about it, and they've articulated that to me. If you haven't done that kind of stuff, you do need to do a little bit of probing around some of those issues to see whether there's any evidence of a sense of future direction, or a sense of relationship building, or a sense of being able to inspire and motivate others. So again, you've either observed those, which is good, but if you haven't, you need to go do a little bit of discovery yourself and figure out if that person has those sensibilities about them.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim. If we did not get to answer your question, you will receive an emailed response directly. Feel free to contact us with additional questions or feedback on today's webcast. As an exclusive offer, you do receive 20% off any Leader Manager Profile product at our website, HRDQ.com. Use the coupon code LMPWebcast, all lowercase with no spaces. We do appreciate your time today, and we hope you found today's webcast informative.
I want to personally thank everybody for listening in. I really appreciate it.